Last Thursday morning, I carried my brother-in-law's refrigerator up a flight of stairs. Just the two of us. He is 53, and he was struggling. I am 64, and I was not. He asked me afterward what I was on. I told him the truth. A tablespoon of something brown and sour every morning, and a warm cup of something my grandfather used to call the old medicine. He looked at me like I had lost my mind. 8 months ago, I would have given him the same look. I had a shelf in my garage with 4 years of supplements on it. Protein powder, creatine, BCAAs, a pre-workout I stopped taking because it made my heart race. None of it stopped the decline. I just kept buying the next thing. Here is what I actually discovered. The men of the greatest generation, the men who worked 12-hour days through the Depression and then went to war, maintained functional muscle strength into their late 60s and 70s on pantry staples that cost almost nothing. Not creatine, not protein powder. Specific foods that targeted the three biological mechanisms that actually drive muscle loss in men over 50, mechanisms that no supplement company has any financial incentive to address. By the end of this video, I am going to give you the exact 4-food system, including one specific food that Dr. Henry C. Sherman at Columbia University documented in 1938 as producing markedly greater muscular endurance in aging populations than any other available dietary source. I found his original work in a microfilm archive. Most people have never heard of it. It works if you are already 60 and already losing ground. It works especially if you have tried the supplement route and felt nothing. Before we get into the first food, I want to ask you something. What cheap everyday food do you remember from your childhood that seemed to keep the older men around you strong without anyone trying? Leave it in the comments below. I read every single one personally. I want to start with a question that took me 2 years to find the real answer to. Why do men over 50 lose muscle even when they eat enough protein? I had always assumed it was a simple protein problem. Eat more protein, keep more muscle. That is what every fitness channel told me. But I was eating 160 grams of protein a day at 59 and still losing a measurable amount of lean mass every 6 months. The answer, when I finally found it, had nothing to do with protein quantity. It had to do with a mechanism that operates upstream of protein synthesis entirely. Your muscles contain a population of dormant repair cells called satellite cells. These are the cells responsible for growing new muscle fibers and repairing damaged ones after exertion. In young men, satellite cells activate quickly after any physical stress and go to work within 24 hours. In men over 50, that activation process slows dramatically. The satellite cells are there, they are just not responding to the signal. Researchers at Tufts University Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging have been studying this exact mechanism for over a decade, and they identified a clear nutritional driver of satellite cell activation failure in older men. Vitamin D deficiency. Not low vitamin D deficiency, and not the mild kind. Approximately 41% of American adults over 50 have levels low enough to significantly impair satellite cell activation, according to a 2011 analysis published in Nutrition Research. The satellite cells are dormant not because they are broken, but because the hormonal signal that wakes them up is absent. Here's where cod liver oil comes in, and here's why it is not just another vitamin D source. Your great-grandparents kept a brown bottle of cod liver oil on the kitchen shelf and gave it to everyone in the family through the winter months. They called it maintenance. They did not understand why it worked. Cod liver oil delivers vitamin D3 in the exact form your body uses to activate the vitamin D receptors on muscle satellite cells. But it delivers it alongside EPA and DHA, which are the omega-3 fatty acids that reduce the inflammatory environment in muscle tissue that blocks satellite cell migration to the site of repair. These two mechanisms work together. Vitamin D wakes the satellite cells up. The omega-3 environment clears the path for them to reach the damaged tissue. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that combined vitamin D and omega-3 supplementation produced significantly greater preservation of muscle mass in adults over 65 than either nutrient alone. In cod liver oil, that combination exists in its natural ratio, the same ratio that fishing communities across northern Europe and coastal America consumed for generations without any awareness of the cellular biology they were supporting. 1 teaspoon of cod liver oil per day. With your first meal, not capsules, the liquid. You need the full fat matrix to absorb the fat-soluble vitamin D correctly. It costs roughly 12 cents per serving in bulk form. The taste is manageable with a glass of cold water immediately after. This was the first food I added, and within 6 weeks I noticed the recovery after physical exertion had shortened by what felt like a full day. I did not know at the time that the satellite cell research would explain exactly why that was happening. But fixing satellite cell activation only addresses the growth and repair side of the muscle equation. There is a second mechanism that operates on the energy delivery side, and it is the one that was failing me every afternoon for years before I understood what was actually happening. What I found next stopped me cold when I looked at the historical record of it, because the answer had been sitting in my kitchen cabinet my entire adult life, and I had been using it for the wrong thing. Unfiltered apple cider vinegar was a daily tonic in working-class American households from the 1920s through the 1950s. Rural families kept a gallon jug on the counter and took a tablespoon before meals. They used it for digestion, for joint pain, for what they called sluggishness. They were not wrong about the effect. They were just wrong about the mechanism. Modern cellular biology has now documented what was actually happening at the metabolic level when those men drank their morning vinegar. Acetic acid, which is the primary active compound in apple cider vinegar, activates a cellular enzyme called AMPK. AMPK is the master switch that regulates glucose uptake into muscle cells. When AMPK is activated, your muscle cells become more efficient at pulling glucose from the bloodstream and converting it to usable energy during exertion. This matters enormously for men over 50 because insulin resistance, which is the gradual decline in your cell's ability to respond to the insulin signal that drives glucose uptake, is one of the primary non-protein causes of muscle energy failure and fatigue in aging men. Researchers at MIZCAN, a food science research institute in Japan, demonstrated in a published clinical trial that daily acetic acid consumption produced significant improvements in glucose uptake efficiency in adults with mild insulin resistance. The AMPK activation mechanism was identified as the primary driver. More directly relevant for aging muscle, a study at Arizona State University found that vinegar consumption before a high-carbohydrate meal significantly reduced post-meal blood glucose and improved the subsequent energy availability curve in healthy adults. The 1940s American who took a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar before lunch was doing something at the cellular level that kept his muscle energy systems running efficiently through the afternoon. He called it good sense. We now call it AMPK activation. The outcome is the same. 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar in a glass of water before your largest meal. The mother, which is the cloudy sediment in unfiltered varieties, contains the acetic acid bacteria that produce the most bioavailable acetic acid fraction. Pasteurized and filtered vinegar is cheaper but does not contain it. Read the label. Under 10 cents a serving. No preparation beyond pouring it. But the AMPK mechanism only addresses the energy delivery problem during waking hours. There is a third failure point in aging muscle that happens entirely while you sleep, and it is the one that I had never once heard discussed in any fitness context before I started reading pre-pharmaceutical era nutrition research. I want to stop here and talk to the man I know is still watching at this point in the video. You are probably between 58 and 73. You have been losing ground for a while, maybe longer than you want to admit. You might be carrying more medication in your cabinet than supplements now. And you have watched enough videos like this one to have a default skepticism that kicks in around this point. The same skepticism that says you have heard this kind of thing before and it did not deliver. I had that exact same internal voice. I fed it for years. It was not protecting me. It was just keeping me in place. When I first understood the overnight muscle protein synthesis problem, the first thing I thought about was my own situation. 61 years old, down 18 pounds of lean mass from where I was at 43, waking up stiff every morning in a way that had been building so gradually. I had stopped noticing it was unusual. And I want to tell you what I did, because it is something you can start tonight without buying a single thing you do not already have at home. Your body synthesizes muscle protein continuously, including during sleep. But overnight, muscle protein synthesis in men over 50 is significantly impaired by one specific deficiency: glycine. Glycine is the most abundant amino acid in collagen and gelatin, and it is the primary regulator of a metabolic process called one-carbon metabolism, which controls the rate at which your body can build new protein overnight. In younger men, glycine is recycled efficiently from protein turnover during the day. In older men, that recycling efficiency drops substantially, creating a functional glycine deficit during the overnight repair window, even when total protein intake is adequate. Researchers at the Medical Research Council in the United Kingdom published a landmark paper in 2015 demonstrating that glycine is conditionally essential in older adults, meaning the body cannot synthesize it fast enough to meet demand, and that dietary glycine supplementation produced measurable increases in overnight muscle protein synthesis in adults over 60. Bone broth. Depression-era women simmered bones for 6 to 8 hours in a stock pot on the back of the stove. Nothing was wasted. The marrow came out. The collagen dissolved into the liquid. The resulting broth was given to anyone who was sick, elderly, or doing heavy physical labor, because the women who made it knew from experience that it helped recovery in a way that plain meat alone did not. They were delivering concentrated glycine directly into the bodies of the people who needed it most. 1 cup of properly made bone broth from collagen-rich cuts contains approximately 1.5 to 2 grams of glycine. Drinking it in the evening, within 2 hours of sleep, positions that glycine directly into the overnight window where your body needs it most for muscle protein synthesis. Make it yourself or buy it from a butcher. Ask for knuckle bones, feet, or marrow bones. Simmer them for a minimum of 6 hours. The broth should gel when it cools. If it does not gel, it does not have enough collagen. A gelling broth contains the glycine concentration that makes it effective. 1 cup every evening before bed. That is what I started with, the night I understood the overnight synthesis problem. I did not notice an immediate change. But within 3 weeks, the morning stiffness had decreased in a way that was not subtle. My wife noticed before I said anything. Therefore, the question I was left with after understanding all 3 of these mechanisms was whether there was something the men of the greatest generation were eating that addressed all 3 simultaneously. Satellite cell activation, AMPK-driven glucose efficiency, overnight glycine availability, something that had been documented by a researcher before the supplement industry existed and that nobody was paying attention to anymore. I found the answer in a footnote. In 1938, Dr. Henry C. Sherman, professor of chemistry at Columbia University and one of the most cited nutritionists in pre-war American science, published a dietary analysis in the Journal of Biological Chemistry, examining the relationship between food habits and muscular endurance in adults over 55 across multiple demographic groups. Sherman had spent 30 years studying the minimum dietary requirements for health and vitality at the cellular level. He was not studying athletes. He was studying ordinary men doing ordinary labor over time. The finding that stopped me when I read it was this. The demographic group in his sample that showed consistently higher muscular endurance scores, not just strength, but sustained physical output across repeated effort, shared one dietary characteristic that no other group matched to the same degree. They consumed liver or liver-based preparations at least twice per week. Sherman did not know why. He noted the correlation and attributed it generally to the high iron and B vitamin content of liver. That explanation is correct but incomplete. We now understand the additional mechanism he did not have the tools to identify in 1938. Liver is the single most concentrated dietary source of carnosine available in any common food. Carnosine is a dipeptide composed of beta-alanine and histidine that is stored in skeletal muscle tissue and functions as an intramuscular acid buffer. During any sustained physical effort, your muscles accumulate hydrogen ions from the energy conversion process. Those hydrogen ions lower the intracellular pH of the muscle, which is what creates the burning sensation and the onset of fatigue. Carnosine neutralizes those hydrogen ions, extending the window of effective muscular output before the acid buildup forces you to stop. In young men, muscle carnosine levels are naturally high. In men over 60, they have declined by approximately 40% from peak levels, according to research from the University of Ghent. That 40% decline is a direct contributor to the faster fatigue onset that most older men attribute simply to being older. It is not aging. It is a specific compound that has dropped to a level where it can no longer buffer the acid load effectively. But liver does not just deliver carnosine. It delivers it alongside the complete B12 content that supports myelin sheath integrity for motor neuron conduction, the CoQ10 that powers mitochondrial energy conversion, and the preformed vitamin A that supports satellite cell differentiation. Sherman's 1938 correlation between liver consumption and endurance was capturing all of those mechanisms in a single food without the biochemical vocabulary to name any of them individually. Liverwurst is liver in a form that most men over 60 will actually eat. Good liverwurst from a butcher contains nothing beyond liver, pork, salt, and spice. It spreads on rye crackers. It costs under $1 for a 2-ounce serving. 2 ounces twice per week. That is the dose. You are delivering carnosine, B12, CoQ10, and preformed vitamin A in a single food that requires no cooking, no preparation, and no refrigeration until the package is opened. I have been doing this for 6 months. My afternoon energy, which had been failing reliably by 2:30 every day for 4 years, now holds through 4 o'clock consistently. I do not have a clinical explanation for exactly how much of that is the carnosine and how much is the B12 and how much is the CoQ10. I just know that Sherman found the same pattern in 1938 without any of the biochemical tools I now have to explain it, and his data matched my lived experience more precisely than anything I found in a supplement catalog. The complete system looks like this. 1 teaspoon of cod liver oil with your first meal activates the satellite cell repair mechanism. 1 tablespoon of raw unfiltered apple cider vinegar before lunch drives AMPK-activated glucose efficiency into your muscle tissue through the afternoon. 1 cup of gelling bone broth in the evening loads glycine into the overnight protein synthesis window. 2 servings of liverwurst per week deliver carnosine alongside the complete micronutrient stack that Sherman documented as the single most reliable predictor of sustained muscular endurance in aging men. The total daily cost of this system is under 40 cents. None of it requires a gym, a blender, or a prescription. None of it was invented. All of it was eaten by the generation of men who did the hardest physical labor in American history and walked away from it still functional in their later decades. I spent 11 years and over $5,000 looking for the answer in a tub with a lid on it. The answer was in a 1938 journal paper in a library archive and in the pantry habits of men who had never heard of a supplement in their lives. If you want to see exactly how I structured this 4-food system into a complete daily and weekly routine, alongside 2 additional changes I made in the same period, I put everything together in one place. I call it the Aging Fix Strength System. Nothing complicated, just the exact steps I wish I had followed 15 years ago. You can check it out below. Now I want a specific answer from you in the comments. Have you ever eaten liverwurst or liver regularly? And did you notice anything different about your physical energy or endurance during that period? Leave your answer and your age. I reply personally to every single comment. If this changed how you think about what is actually driving your muscle loss, subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next. The next video covers a single daily habit that was nearly universal among American men in the 1940s that has almost completely disappeared, and that new research from the University of Texas Medical Branch shows directly increases muscle protein synthesis efficiency by reducing a specific inflammation marker that blocks amino acid uptake in men over 60. That video will make everything in this one work better. Stay moving. I will see you there.